Welcome to the Manders Mindset Podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest's mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Manders Mindset. We're here for a little bit of a unique episode, and I'm here for the ever-changing mindset connection. I'm here with Jared Carroll, who was on episode 18, and I'm also here with Wallie from the ever-changing vibe. How you guys doing today?
What's up? What's up? This is glad to be back. So this is exciting. We fished Wallie off the streets. Glad to get him here on the podcast. A little probably rusty, but we're here to have a good time.
Next question.
Nice vibe connection of the mindset. We're working it. Wallie, how you doing?
Next question.
Okay. What's up?
All right. No, I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. I think we had a lot of fun. The time you came on Ever Changing Vibe, it was one of the last few episodes that went out on my podcast. And I think it was one of the last few times I remember having a lot of fun in the studio, like laughing a lot. So when you reached out and, asked and try to set this whole thing up or, get me on, I was really excited because, I had a lot of fun hanging out, chatting with you. You could obviously take some jokes and dish them back out. So I was so excited to also, let me just add, I am a little rusty. Let's get into this.
It's okay.
I got to practice looking at the camera. Like that's something I've never been good at. So, one of the things that like way back when I started my podcast, I had this huge vision of really like, creating with people. I got the spark. I always talked about the spark, like ignited in me that I needed to podcast for the rest of my life when I was a guest on Jared's podcast the first time when I was using my full like government name. And then I turned that into like, all right, the only way to always do a podcast is to create my own podcast. And then from there on out, like, I was like, I loved the idea of podcasters in this local area, the more of them, the better. And I, even at that time, I helped like launch or create and launch a podcast. I was a part of other podcasts. I was guesting on any podcast that I could. I loved, I learned about the Roadcaster from the podcast studio with Winner Gets Nothing. It's I don't think they record anymore, but they let me use their studio, and the host Tom was showing me, he just showed me his exact workflow. I took that, I bought my own Roadcaster, I brought that to my studio. Jared came on the podcast, we started collabing a little bit. He introduced me to the camera and kind of got to see the utility of a Roadcaster, and that like just seemed like the perfect world that, I wanted to live in. Is just like, I love podcasting. I love meeting people that want to podcast, that like doing podcasts. Some of my favorite guests, so I call him the Vibe Champ, Ivan. I've had him on a bunch of times. Every time he's on, he doesn't have his own podcast, but like, he's always just so down to podcast. And I just love being around this world. I'm just like, I've been obsessed with podcasts and podcasting, and really just wanted to make that my my life, like somehow infuse that into my day-to-day life, somehow make that like my job, my income, so that there's no reason that I'm not podcasting one day. And the kind of connection that we have here is like, Jared got that spark ignited, and every chance I get to help build and add to, because I know how tough these first couple episodes can be, especially when you have such a guest heavy or a guest dependent style of a podcast. The early ones it's hard to network. It's scary to network, especially with new people. You don't really know who you're having on or how to get them to talk, or maybe you've never really talked to them before you're doing the podcast, and There's all this stuff going into it. So I know it's so early on, and I'm not trying to like, boost my ego and give myself credit for being on your podcast, but I know how much it was to even reach out to us and have us all collab. But I just want to tell you, Amanda, I am so excited for you to see, especially as, I'm sure we'll talk about like my recent hiatus and kind of everything going on with my podcast now, because there hasn't been a podcast in a minute. That like I'm almost here to help pass the torch on to the next podcaster, and it's my way of still being in the podcast community without having that like daunting, overwhelming, that burnout living in my soul, with trying to figure out how to do my ever-changing vibe. I like seeing these other ones spark and grow and flourish.
Thank you. I completely agree though. We had so much fun on your podcast. And then Jared and I on mine, we had so many laughs, and I was like, the three of us have got to collab and create a podcast.
Here we are.
That connection.
So what do you want to know about me? What do we do on
Can I add something?
mindset?
I want to add something to kind of what Brandon was talking about there. And like, I don't want to take any credit for any spark that I ignited. He had the spark. He just needed a little bit push in the right direction. Like when I first reached out to him to come on the podcast, he had just started launching his gaming stuff. And this is where the Wallie stuff comes into play. That was his account. That's what he was using at the time to launch. It was really COD videos. And that was like cool to me. Anything that someone did on social media was cool to me, and I wanted to put people on. That was kind of always the goal for my podcast. I know we talked a lot about my podcast when I was on recently, but that was the idea, was to put on people who do cool things and highlight that everyone has something worth sharing. And me and Brandon talked for days, hours, however you want to break it down, about content. And like I had one point he wanted to manage my podcast. I was like, dude, you could do this. Like you do your own. Like, and it was cool to have those early days of the conversations about just like content, and to see him go through the process of like figuring out what he wanted to do. And I remember we set up episode 50 was what we had you on, and that was a big milestone for me. And I gave you the honor of coming on as a guest for that one, because we talked about it so much, and it was kind of your way to use it as like a diving board. You jumped off that, and you've been swimming ever since in your content.
And I went really deep into
deep, and it's been changing ever since. And that aspect though is like really cool to see how you started from doing podcasting back then to where you are now with like the studio and even work with Gio and stuff. It's been really cool to witness.
Yeah, it's like I started from the top of the diving board and went that's the Drake line. Started from the top and went to the.
You went to the bottom for sure.
Next question.
Hiatus, like definitely at the bottom. Picked him off the street, put street clothes on him. He's like chilling now.
So give us a little background about you, Wallie, Brandon. Give us some background. Who are you?
I really hate that question. I don't really like talking about myself. Well, I don't like talking about myself, but I always talk, like I don't like directly talking about myself. It's just weird for me. But I also, part of the like discomfort that I have with it is I do believe that I'm always changing, like my mindset, my beliefs, my politics, my aura. I'm such an overthinker and always analytical about, like, I'm the biggest skeptic of myself. Like, I think every thought that pops in my head, I'm like, why am I thinking of that? I'll give you a quick example of something that I was literally told myself, don't share this on the podcast because I don't know what I'm going to do with this thought. But as I kind of took a break from ever-changing vibe and content, and so AOHD and Wallie, and finally giving myself this break, I've been trying to get back into it by coming up with my next idea. Like, what's my next idea going to be? And I started to think about, all right, I really love podcasting. And there was a time where I would tell myself, I want to be the best podcaster ever. And I think I've realized that and kind of like, pruned it down, what do you call it when you're like trimming plants, whatever, like tuned that down or more specified, more focused that same thought as I want to, I believe in like this idea of organic and original and genuine and like true to myself. And I also think that I like to pride myself on being creative. So I don't think I want to be the best podcaster, but I want to somehow change up the game. So that was leading me into some thoughts. And I'm not going to share those thoughts because some of them might happen. But then I started being a skeptic of myself and I started to question myself. I would ask, am I thinking of podcast ideas to be different, like for different sake? Or am I thinking of these ideas, like these different ways of doing podcasts to find a new niche, to find like a cool structure, like, change up the game in a new way that like you haven't seen podcasts in this way. Like, am I actually trying to do like create something cool, valuable and different? Or am I just trying to, okay, what's a different way that I haven't seen before? And I just want to be different for different sake. So, that's why I like don't like to circle back. I don't like talking about myself because by tomorrow I will have already thought of my opinions, my politics, my things have already changed. Like my life is like constantly moving and changing, my views, my opinions, my life story. Like, I mean, there's the factual things that I can't change from my life. And those are the things I don't know how to talk about. But as me and Jared have kind of talked about, like, I started with this gaming channel. That's just like my introduction to putting myself on the map, like putting myself out there. Cause before that, I like from like middle school on, I always wanted to be a stand-up comic and I never like did an open mic. I would always write new bits or ideas on my phone and just never took the step to do that. And I was building resentment of like, I'm getting too old to start a stand-up career. I'm getting too old. And then pandemic, you have a lot of extra time on your hands. I was for like some time in like 2016, I think is when I really found podcasts and really started getting obsessed with podcasts. And that idea of podcast started to turn into the same idea or the same way I thought of stand-up, where that is a really cool thing. Like, I wish I could do that one day. And this is why I give a little bit of credit to, Jared in the Carroll connection, is because I always like, the more I thought of it that way, the more like unrealistic a career in that would be, but it was always like a dream career. So then when I got to sit down and do a podcast in person and with a guy that I went to college with, and I was like, oh wait, this is like an average guy, like a guy my age with, like at that point, we're both out of college a couple of years. So we've both only been working at some salary job for a couple of years. Like, it's like anyone can really do a podcast. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to regret my life for never trying stand up, or podcast like I did with stand up. So I'm just going to start my own podcast. And Jared showed me that it was a reality. It was something I could create for myself. So that's why I like, and also like part of the props I am genuinely like so excited for you, Amanda. I mean, being on, what is this, 23, 24? How many, or well, we don't know. It depends on but you're in your like 20s. You're a young sprouting podcast. It gets me so excited because, my thought, and kind of like where I see myself kind of going in the future is like helping everybody learn that anybody can do a podcast, and everybody should at least try. Like, if you're trying at the level of being a guest on a podcast, find a way to be a guest on a podcast. It is a really cool outlet in like the Carroll connection. Like, it is a chance to connect with humans in ways that society's almost forgot about because of social media and the internet and all these things. And I just want to I want to help other people find that that fire that lit up in me after doing Jared's podcast, and that fire that like burned hot for, you know, a couple of years, and really like drove me through just like improving the you know, obsession, or just increasing the obsession, improving the quality of the audio, of the guests, of the visuals, of like where I'm posting it, how I'm growing, and like all the stuff that went into it is like that's what I want to show other people. Like you're capable of, you know, achieving whatever your industry is.
Chance.
You just got to do it. You just got to start doing it. And like Jared joked about, like, you know, I was asking to be his manager. I was, in my mind, what I was referring to is like, I want to be your young Jamie. I want to help you, like, you know, just organize your notes and like help you plan and schedule your guests, because I knew at that point I was already obsessed with podcasting. He had a podcast. I was like, how do I be a part of a podcast? Like, let me just have a part. I realized after, it's like, I just need to have my own podcast. That's the way I be a part of a podcast. But I think
just imagine if you did that for me and you never got into a podcast like that. I think like, as you're saying that, maybe you think like, what happens if you came on that journey with me and like tried to do that, and then
your podcast would be so much better.
But the point was like, how are you going to schedule my guests when I know my schedule like that? Like, it was like putting you in an assistant.
You would have to have good communication.
It was, what it was for me was like, I wasn't ready to say yes to being a guest on your podcast, but I still wanted to be a part of something. That's really what I was trying to do, because I didn't realize how like anyone could do a podcast with like a fucking iPhone. Like you really could do a full-fledged podcast.
I did before. Fun fact.
I did all my early episodes. I say that at least once, that you could do a podcast with just a microphone or with just an iPhone. But what I like, part of why, you know, this joke about like me quitting Ever Changing Vibe, and Ever Changing Vibe is going to be whatever it ends up being. I don't really know the full story. I don't know where it ends or where it starts or whatever. But one of the things that I knew was super important to me when I started was I wanted to show people they have a place that you can just do a podcast. Cause like the idea of like, you're starting a podcast and like, you know, to even try to compete in this industry, like, all right, I need to get a camera. I need to get a roadcaster. I need to get a this. I need to get lighting. I need to get a studio. I need to get a like, all these things are your first questions. When the best podcast, the only question that matters is, what do you want to do? What do you want your podcast to be about? How are you going to do a podcast? So I wanted to create an environment in which, you know, someone like doesn't have those constraints, doesn't have those questions. They can just like, they have an idea, and I want to be able to help them like execute that idea. Like, I have the equipment, I have the cameras, I have I've invested 3 years of my life and money into this thing, so that someone who goes, well, you know, I really want to do a podcast, but like, you know, me and my buddy don't really like know what to do or what to get, what to buy, or where to post it. Like, what? Okay, if we record it, what software do we record it on? How do we edit it? How do we get it onto Apple? Like, that's like I'm a teacher. Like my salary paid job, I'm a teacher full time. So like, I love teaching. Like, I think that's something that's important to me, is like teaching, instead of just like teaching people, like actually giving them the experience to show them that they can do it. Like that's what I, you know, I'm hoping to kind of create here. And I think Ever Changing Vibe was really about like showing people by example that like anybody can do that. Like I was a nobody. I was a teacher who always dreamed of being a podcaster until I started podcasting. And like I'm not Ryan Reynolds starting a podcast tomorrow who's going to get immediate views, but like, if I can build up 136 episodes of a podcast, you can too. It like, and that's why like throughout the journey, I did I had someone do my original logo, but then I created my own logo. I started, you know, doing all my like Instagram posts. I did my own graphic design. I learned how to graphic design for my podcast. I learned how to build my own thumbnails. I learned how to do video editing so I could get them onto YouTube, whether that was like you know, and a lot of this, like I say, I learned, but like I was taught, like I sought out the people that I knew how to do it. Like Jared was the one who introduced me to Simplecast, where that's the platform that you know really need if you want to get your podcast onto the all the streaming platforms like Apple, Spotify, etc. So like that, I had to learn how to do that, and now I have all this like knowledge and experience that like I want to pass on to not just like one person. I don't want to just pass the torch to a man and say, here, take it, teach the next person. I want to like use that, you know, fire that ignited in me so long ago to spread like wildfire and get everybody to like find their passion and like really like build up, like don't regret not trying to be a stand-up, you know?
I love all of that because I will say I completely agree. Anybody can start a podcast. But when I first decided I knew I wanted to start one, and I think I told both y'all this, I had no fucking idea how to do that. I Googled, how do you start a podcast, and could not figure it out. Then I talked to Sean, and I didn't understand what he was saying over the phone. So he had to physically show me. Like, anybody can do it, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing to know how. Like, if you can do the research and understand it, maybe you can, but like I'm a visual type learner. So I think that's really great that you want to be able to pass the torch and show people that. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think building off of that too, like getting people, and this is I think what Brandon was talking about, was him getting to like my quote unquote studio at the time, being in the environment, seeing how podcasting can be done. It's the and that you're talking about how Sean had to physically show it's you got to see it, you got to be a part of it to like really understand what it is. And I think I've had the luxury of having a lot of different people on the podcast and getting them in the room. They're like, wow, like this is like a podcast. Like they see the stuff, but like, especially when you're starting out, you don't see the beginning stuff. You don't see where it all started. Like I have a picture, if you scroll all the way down on the Carroll Connection, I have a post where it's literally like a fucking like snack TV desk in my bedroom with like my Blue Yeti Nano on a box. Not even that one.
No,
it's the Blue Yeti box in my room with my laptop, the microphone, and just a little tray when I recorded one of my episodes. Wow. And like that's where it was like really starting. And then I even have a picture from like my first episode with my friend in his garage. Like we're just like set up, chilling. And I'm not gonna say what we were doing like during the podcast, but like that beginning part is what you don't see usually from like the stuff. I have like a post that's saved on my phone of 2 pictures of Joe Rogan. It's a picture of him when he's like sitting behind his like fucking computer, just doing nothing and doing doing kind of what we're doing, like this, like very early in the podcast game. Like obviously we're a little bit more advanced with technology, but like he's very early in the stuff. And then there's a picture of him in his studio. It's like everyone wants to be here without going through this. Like you got to go through that part to eventually get to that. And that's the longevity aspect. It's where Brandon was talking about. You just got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. And that's a good mindset to have. The part that we're kind of adding here to that is to remember to be kind to like your mental health, to take the break, to know your limit of how many episodes you could drop every single week, of how many weeks repeatedly you want to keep doing it. I've had that with my own self where I would start taking Decembers off because obviously the holidays and all that stuff. Luckily this year I had a lot of people that came back from out of state that were willing to do podcasts, but I usually like that time for reflection periods. And I think it's good to have that space. And the longer you do it, the more time you kind of earn. I look at it as kind of like jobs, like a salary jobs. The longer you be at the company, the more PTO you can get. The longer you do the podcast, the more time you've earned for yourself to take away from that content or that whatever you're doing, the podcast. You get that luxury because people trust that you can do something. People can trust that you're going to put a podcast out. Even if you're going to take a break, I know you're still going to come back and do content because you've shown that you can do that. And you have to build that over time. And it's going through that process. You just got to be kind to yourself though, as you're going through that process. And I think we're all looking to always add something. And I think that's what kind of Brandon was talking about, is like that next thing. it's always that next mountain. And I think it's good to have that mindset because there's always something else that you can conquer. And maybe your content becomes more about like teaching and guidance. Maybe there's something that you could teach because like obviously you're a teacher, you have those skills. Maybe you tap into that and teach about something, whether it's podcasting, whether it's about stand-up, whether it's something. Like we all have skills and we all are good at things. You just got to tap into those things. And sometimes you need a little bit of help from other people to tap into that. Like even what you said earlier, like the spark thing. Like I'll push, like I keep pushing back on that because that's you. Like that's all you. Like you had that from the beginning. Like you just didn't know about all this other stuff. And putting you in a different environment, you're able to see that and you found that passion for yourself. So sometimes it's taking people and putting them in the situation and not like holding their hand, but like you're showing them a new way. And I think that's kind of what we've all experienced doing podcast or traveling or whatever. It's like getting in that new environment and it's experiencing something for the first time will spark that passion that we're all kind of doing here right now.
Dude, I'm getting soft with age, man. I almost cried watching Godzilla last week. Stop saying you and referring to me, dude.
Well, I think you also kind of needed this episode too, and I'm glad that we were able to do this together. And like, it's not like obviously we didn't know whose podcast I guess we were recording this on originally. But like,
you gotta have the communication, people.
But the fact that we're still here doing this, I think, is a testament. And I'll give you your flowers, Amanda, was like doing the virtual. This was doing your podcast virtually was the first time that I've done a virtual podcast. And I've been very like anti-virtual for a long time. I have my reasons. I think just energy in the room and stuff like that. You've done the podcast with me and Brandon, and you could see what that's like. And for flexibility purposes, like this worked out great for us. So we all didn't have to travel and coordinate times with our real life. This really allowed for that conversation to happen. And it kind of replanted that seed in my head of like, I could do virtual podcasts. Like this is something that's very tangible and that I might actually be more open to doing because you've had some really great guests that you might not have had if you only did in-person podcasts. So I think it does open that door to that potential. I think doing this podcast with you has really opened my eyes to that. So I think it's good that you're doing this because you're teaching me something that I wouldn't have otherwise have seen.
It's all about the collaboration.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I mean, this is like this hiatus has been going on long enough, and I have a couple of ideas of like, all right, this is the next step that I'm going to take. But even before we started recording the like hour that we just were shooting the shit, feeling the lights, talking on the mic, I am rusty, but I was like, I wouldn't have done like if even like leading up to this, because we were initially all going to come down to the studio and do it. I was kind of trying to find an out like all week of like, I don't.
Oh, I knew you were. I could tell.
Oh, I know too. That's why I sent a message. We're still on for Friday, right?
Dude,
We still on for Friday?
I could tell. Well, I knew because also the fact he wasn't posting podcasts. I'm like, well, he might not want to be talking about this because he might be going through something that we don't really know here. And like, that's why I was
maybe he needs some content. Let me help.
Yeah. And you know, I realized I needed, but I don't think it would have been as fruitful, honestly, if we were all here in the studio. I think I needed to come back lightly onto a virtual because for a couple of reasons. I think if we all came down to the studio, it would have brought me right back to all the shit that I like had to leave because of like figuring out all the camera angles, figuring out all the lighting, making sure everything's going to work and everything's ready. And then like, who's going to edit the podcast? Who's going to have like, what are we going to do? And like, that was already stressing me out. So I was like, I needed it to be lighter. So like having a virtual is kind of like that stepping stone of like, all right, this I could feel comfortable because it's like, and also like not doing my podcast, like, all right, we're doing Amanda's podcast. So like, you know, I don't have to think about what content we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's like, I just have to come here and just talk. And I think those things allowed me to just come down to the studio and just like, all right, I'm just here to kick it. And, you know, whatever happens, I can do that. Like, and I just needed to kind of get back into doing that. Does this mean there's a podcast going out this Sunday? No. or next Sunday or whenever this gets posted. I don't know. Who knows when the next Ever Changing Vibe will come out. But like if this wasn't virtual, I don't know if this would have helped. I think it arguably would have hurt, my next step. But it also, because it happened, because Amanda, coordinated this whole thing, like I got back into doing it. So like it helps because you got it to happen, and then it helps because we did it virtual. So again, this is what we're talking about, like breaking the mold. Like that's something that Jared's podcast is different than Eli's, is different than mine, and Amanda's is different in her own regard. Like everyone had, like Amanda's is, you could talk about all the similarities as an interview style, just like Jared's, but this small difference of being virtual or that the host is a different person is the biggest difference of all. And it leads to such different communication, such different conversation, and such different benefits and results, things that we can't foresee. I'm just trying not to cry.
No, that's okay.
For the record,
I did not mean to pressure you at all with messaging.
Amanda, I needed it.
Oh yeah.
But also at the same time, I was like, I get notifications on my phone when Ever Changing Vibe posted the new podcast. I haven't gotten one of those in a while. And it was shortly after I posted Jared's. I was like, I'm going to check. Maybe he's posted one. Maybe my phone didn't send me one. And it didn't. I'm like,
Yeah, and I also took them all down. I took them all down from Apple and Spotify. And then I removed a bunch of them from the Wallie YouTube channel so that, I could hopefully direct more traffic to the specifically like the Ever Changing Vibe channel. But hey, I still own I own most of the raw footage for almost every episode, and I still own all of the edited versions. And who knows, if people really do want to listen, like it'll show. Like I don't need it. I don't need to keep doing the podcast for, it to grow. Like I've done so many hours of content, not just like the podcast, but like on everything, like on other podcasts, on my reaction channel, on all these things. And a lot of it is still out there. So the bits of it that's still out there, people really do start like finding it and viewing it and commenting on it and liking it and sharing it and, asking for more. Hey, I not only will be incentivized to create more, but I also have all the backlog that I can re-release. Like that's the thing that like, I'm like, it's been kind of sad that like it's been kind of, like a grievance process kind of getting to this point. Cause like initially, literally the Ever Changing Vibe has been like the pandemic. Like, oh, we're going to go away for 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 2 years. All right. And like the pandemic lasts forever. Like, so I don't know, like maybe this fucking, hiatus lasts forever, but all the fucking memories that we still have from the pandemic, like I still have all of it. Like if there's really like a market or people really want to see more of it, I've created a lot of content. I can put a lot out. I can re-release stuff. And I can create more stuff. I like, I'm not in a rush to like just create the next thing and to just like keep doing Ever Changing Vibe because I told myself I was going to always do Ever Changing Vibe for the rest of my life. Like I one of the things, like if I, like when I talk to myself about being a podcaster and I, talked about this earlier, I said I wanted to be the best podcast, realized I just wanted to change the game, but I do want to be a really good podcaster. Well, just like any artist, you have to know when the thing has served its purpose, when the thing has run its course. You can't just keep working at one specific thing and keep tweaking it and growing it and like just doing it because you're doing it. Like at some time, like at some point, the wheels are going to fall off. It's just like, it's the, I lost, like you can really sense it if you listen to like, and I'm not asking anyone to go listen to every single episode I've ever recorded, but like you can really sense, and it goes in ebbs and flows, but definitely towards the end, it flows down. The authentic and the genuine, like behind the words and like the laughter or whatever is happening on the podcast, you can sense me like not loving it anymore, not having fun with it. I told you earlier, Amanda, I had a lot of fun on that episode, but if you really see the whole picture painted in front of you, you can see that person that was Wallie and how like, yes, they were having fun in the moment, but that wasn't a fun time in their life. Like they weren't genuinely like in a good place. Like they were doing that to do it because they created that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. I got to do 10,000 podcasts to get the 10,000. And I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. So, I'm not rushing back to just to get back to that. Like I said, like any good artist, any good creator knows when the thing that they created has served its purpose and when to create the next thing.
I'm going to add 2 points to that. 2 points. I think talking about being like the best when you came on one of the episodes, we talked about being undeniable. Like you're going to do the thing. That was like one of our episodes that we had a while back. And I thought it was a great kind of concept. And that was like your rant. The undeniable rant was the thing. And I think what has happened is you've kind of almost put too much stress on yourself to be the best by talking about it all the time. I think it's good. This goes into letting it go. And what we were talking about off podcast is I've gone down the same rabbit hole of like, especially with my TikTok stuff, was like, I'm going to get 1 million followers. I put it on my vision board one year. Like I was going to get 10K on Instagram. Like I was going to be this thing. Like, and you get a little bit of views, you get some followers, and you start really thinking like this is going to be the thing. But adding so much of that pressure, it's almost this like idea of manifestation fueled with social media toxicity, where the people want to manifest a thing, and manifestation is real, but you have to let the thing go and you have to let it be what it is. Like I've also kind of come back to this conclusion with my own podcast, and I've talked about it recently with a lot of people, is it is what it is. Like most people are not going to click on a podcast of random people on YouTube and listen. Like I know that, but that is not the reason why I do podcasts. It's not for the other people. It's for myself to reconnect with my friends and the people in my life and talk to new people, because it creates this skill that you work through podcasting. And you probably even seen it in yourself. And Amanda, you probably have seen it in yourself as you've gone through this journey. You get better at talking to people and communicating with people on a level that most people never get to really work on, especially nowadays with like technology and the internet. And you use these skills to build on the next thing. Like I was listening to, I don't know if you'll know this video game streamer, but Cypher PK. He really does like Fortnite really right now. And like he was showing on this TikTok of his views on like Twitch. And in the beginning, right before Fortnite really started to get big, it was like nothing. He's like, you got to go through this period to learn the skills. So when that thing, the really popular thing happens, like for him, it was Fortnite, you have the skills to be ready for that event. So when Fortnite happened for him, he was a good streamer. He had the skills worked down. He knew how to do the editing. So when it came time, all he had to do was just perform. So maybe podcasting for the Ever-Changing Vibe has closed this chapter, but there could be another chapter getting ready to open. And you have the skills from the Ever-Changing Vibe to go into this. Use Gio as a perfect example about this when he was doing Mic 'em Up podcast. He switched and pivoted into the AOHD channel with you guys reacting to content. And he learned all these different skills and was able to turn that into something new that he seems to really enjoy and that you seem to enjoy when you guys were making that content. So it's kind of being able to look at it as it's like a different chapter in a book. It's always going to be different chapters. Some chapters are going to be shorter than others, and some chapters are going to be shittier than others. You just got to have to go through that growth process with it. And I've gone through that in my own podcast. Like there's definitely times where I was like, do I really want to sit down with another person and talk about their life? And you go through that. But once you get back to the why, and I think you're searching for that why again, and maybe it leads to a different thing, maybe not. But the why for me was always getting that validation from that person feeling seen and heard. When I was literally talking to someone, that'll be on episode 167 that'll drop out. This was his third time on the podcast, and it was our best podcast yet. He came on the podcast because he knew it was a platform to talk about his mental health, and he was going through this struggle in terms of his trauma that he's built up in his life between being an EMT, his relationship, losing his mom. Like, he was like, I wanted to share that it's okay to like look for help. And he's like, this was the place that I wanted to do that in. And hearing someone actually validate kind of why I created my podcast originally was the most like refreshing thing and motivating thing, was to get that validation that what I envision this being is that for other people. And it's getting back to that why you do the thing you do. And it's gonna always change. We're people. We change. We're supposed to change. If you're not changing, I probably talked to both of you about this, you're regressing by default. And I think you're going through this process, and me and Amanda talked about this before in the last podcast we were together. It's that taking that step back, but not backwards.
I said that earlier, Brandon.
Yeah, you did.
I did. When we were on the phone, I said, you know what it sounds like to me you're doing? It sounds like you're taking a step back, as Jared would say.
Mm.
And that is never a bad thing.
It's not the bad thing, Brandon. It's and I think I love the fact that you're being vulnerable about something that is kind of personal. That's what makes podcasting good, is when it's not so typical and scripted. Like, we're talking about real stuff that people go through, especially as podcasters. This is a very unique situation when we all do podcasts and we all talk about different things in different ways, but we're able to come together and talk about these struggles. I know Gio hates when podcasters talk about podcasting, and that was always his biggest.
Hey, he's not here. He's not here.
And that was always his biggest thing against us. But I loved those sessions because no one gets it like another podcaster. You get the struggle of what we go through between the stuff. And I that's why I think these sessions are valuable, whether in person and what Amanda's taught me, or virtual. Like, it's worth doing these and reconnecting. And I think you're right in the sense that us doing this virtual, and for the record, I would host the podcast next time, just saying, but having you not host it, Brandon, takes that pressure where you can kind of slowly ease back into this and like get that kind of fire reignited and kind of get back into why you do what you do. Because you got the personality, you got the equipment, you got the mindset for it. You just got to figure out where you're going to take it next. You got everything there. Like, you're in a better position than most people in terms of like podcasting.
I agree.
It's taking advantage of that. And I think this break will be really good for you in terms of whatever comes from it, whether you're just better in your life in general, whether you're like a better man in general in terms of who you are at your job, who you are with your family, who you are with your girlfriend, like getting back to that who you are. And I think you talked about that a little bit, and I think that's a really good point.
I'm trying not to do a joke right now because that was a very nice moment. Yes, Amanda. Say more nice things.
Journal on that. You talked about how you were journaling every day. I don't know if you're still doing that in the new year. Journal on that.
Journaling what?
Who you are. Any of those questions, any of the things Jared just said. Your why.
Are you asking me if I journal about that, or are you telling me to journal about it?
Are you journaling?
Yeah, I still journal every day.
Have you journaled about any of the things Jared just said?
Yeah, like every day.
Okay.
So going on those silent car
Dude,
rides.
It's fucking crazy. That's why I started journaling, is because I'm fucking crazy. I mean, like, a lot of the things that you guys have said have been, the thoughts that I've already had. But as I referenced earlier, I'm the biggest skeptic of myself. This is why it's like still very valuable to have these conversations. I'm the biggest skeptic of myself. So I've had most of the advice, the tips, the things that you guys have just told me, or have when referring to me, is like the thoughts that I've already had and I've written down in my journal, or sometimes I just have had the thoughts while on my walk, and maybe I don't write them down, but I've thought about all these things. But I'm a skeptic of myself, so I don't believe that I'm thinking of them for the right reason. I think I'm thinking of them because I'm just trying to justify why I'm not doing a podcast anymore, or just justify, why, like, or maybe I'm being lazy, but this is my justification of being lazy. This is why I'm not motivated, not driven. So it's valuable to hear it from you guys, because I am not a skeptic of you guys. I believe, like, if my character has shown enough that, like, when you guys say it to me, like, that means it's hard to be a skeptic of that. It's hard to find a counterpoint against why Jared just said those things about me, or why, Amanda, even on the phone earlier today, said you're taking a step back and not, backwards or whatever. Like, that's because those thoughts, when I had them originally, were not false thoughts, or were not like, something that I was just doing to justify my, like, those were those valid thoughts. Whereas the things that you haven't brought up, some of the other criticisms I've talked myself down into a spiral because of, that you haven't talked about today, that you haven't brought up today, are probably the more false thoughts, or the thoughts that are the ones that I shouldn't be listening to. So you're just like helping me, or like encouraging me to think on the better mindset, like the things that I'm, because if I'm having, I mean, this is
That is my ultimate goal.
I'm having
the mindset.
Yeah, having but like understanding that, like, if let's say I literally do think every thought that I could possibly, like, I think of every direction that I could possibly think of, and every solution. Well, if, like, only so many of them could actually be true. So the ones that are reiterated by the people outside of my thoughts, the ones that aren't part of my thoughts, like you, Jared, my brother, my mom, my dad, like my girlfriend, the people that say the things that I've thought before, I'm like, well, those have to be true. Like, like if other people see that in me, or see some kind of correlation in the way I act and what I put out in the world, then those are my true thoughts. And, in a weird connection to like positive mindset that I'm finding is, more often than not, almost, I would say 99% of the time, the thoughts that are in that case true, or that are reiterated, are always the positive thoughts. Like, my negative thoughts are never reiterated. No one ever like, I'm, like I said, like, one of my biggest criticism is that, like, I'm not being creative, and I'm just being lazy, and I'm actually quitting. Like, that's been like my biggest criticism, my biggest spiral since taking a small break for myself with this podcast. And no one that I've talked to about that, like, when talking about my break or whatever, has ever said something of like, oh, you're just a quitter. You're just justifying you being lazy. You're not motivated. Like, no one's ever said that. Like, even Jared, when he made the joke about like, oh, you're really quitting this thing, it's like, that joke alone, he's like asking the question, you're really quitting? Like, it's almost like a shock or a surprise. Like, it's not believable to him. So if Jared doesn't believe that I'm actually quitting, then I know deep down that I'm not actually quitting. It's just that I'm not, I don't have the fun and the passion behind that podcast, Ever Changing Vibe. Like I think that title has run its course, served its purpose, or perhaps just finished the chapter. But, I just watched The Hunger Games. There's many chapters in the first book, and then there's other books. So, like, it doesn't mean that Ever Changing Vibe is over. And it doesn't even mean that, and this is what I specifically told myself not to mention on the podcast today, but exclusive drop for Amanda. All right. So are you
sure you want to do this before you do this?
Because you're gonna hold what I was about to do.
Because you might have to hold yourself accountable if you say something live on a podcast.
Yeah. No,
hey, I shared stuff I didn't expect to on his, but it's okay.
Yeah, you said you're gonna do the flossing in public or whatever. Like, crazy.
That is not crazy. That weird.
It's weird. You know what's so funny?
It's not weird. It's gross.
Before we get into what your point was going to make, I went to Salem with my girlfriend for her birthday, and on the street, I found a floss pick. I was like, oh my God. What the? Yeah, I was like, that's fucking disgusting, but I guess they're right.
Anyways, no, what was I going to say? I was
exclusive.
Yeah, before that, like,
it's probably like a content idea. It's probably sounds like you're something that you're thinking with your content.
I was closing a chapter.
You know what I would suggest? Maybe even like, and maybe this doesn't make the podcast, but this you can make podcast seasons. Maybe that whole first few 3 years of Ever Changing Vibe was just season 1. Like you go into season 2 and it's something, because this is what Ever Changing Vibe is. It's always
Ever-changing.
changing. Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's this maybe is the closure of chapter 1 or season 1, however you want to refer it. And
Yeah.
there's going to be a new chapter, and maybe you talk. This is just an example, but specifically about Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and that's the next chapter. All Dragon Ball Z or whatever it is. Like there could be another chapter. Maybe you do all reaction channels. Maybe the reaction channels are its own season. Like you
I
can
agree.
decide. You can decide that, and I think I try
Even
my
more
best.
so with your title, you have the ability to do so. Just want
Exactly.
to
That was the thought behind that title, was like, it's limitless. I can do whatever I want with it.
It literally is.
It could
But
become serial. It could become, something else. It could just, die out. But like Ever Changing Vibe, I mean, yes, it was the episodic podcast that was from 1 to 136 or whatever. But Ever Changing Vibe started long before I even created my gaming Instagram account. Like Ever Changing Vibe is just my journey. Like it doesn't, like the next chapter of Ever Changing Vibe doesn't even have to be related to content. Like it could just be the next thing I do. Like, I don't know, like, I was saying how, I like one thing one day, or I have an opinion on one thing, and then it's completely flip flop. Like, I really do, enjoy teaching, but one of the things I don't enjoy about teaching is like the not being the boss of myself, like not being, like not owning the credit, like not owning the responsibility, whether it goes good or bad. Like I think that's one of the things I loved about podcasting and content creation is that my name is attached to, that thing. So like if it does good, it's on me, and and I get the prize. But if it does bad, that's on me. Like I like when it relies on me. Whereas like teaching, if I'm like the best teacher in the subject that I am teaching at the grade level that I'm teaching, then my school gets to go, we have a really good business 5th grade class. And like that district gets to show on their MCAS, they have really good math scores because of that really good teacher. If that teacher's really bad, they get let go. And then, there's a whole thing about like, all right, this district's math teacher or like math department sucks, and it's due to the teachers. But like in both of those scenarios, they're not saying it's, Mr. Wallie that sucks. Like I'm not getting credit whether I do good or I do bad. Like my principal will come up to me and like, hey, you're doing a really good job. But like I want to put something out in the world. And Jared and I talked about this on the last time he was on my podcast, where it's like, I want to have something like I want to create something that like has me attached to it. Like legacy is what we talked about. Is like I don't get any legacy out of, like, I'm not going to get a library named after me for being a really good teacher. Like I get lots of parents and students in 20 years might go, oh my gosh, I remember your class. That was so awesome. I loved Google Sheets lessons. You made Google Sheets fun in 5th grade. Like that's going to be really cool and really fulfilling and like nice to hear. But even the town that I work in, the district that I work at, like no one knows who I am. It's like the students that don't have my class don't know who I am, don't really know much about me. Like I can't leave a lasting legacy on something that I am not an owner of, like that I'm not like a part of, like I'm just a part of. Like I want to be responsible for whether it goes good or bad. Like that's why like I am so like, like driven, or like have such an emphasis and value on originality and creativity, is because like I want to be like known for the thing that like I just think there's a huge value for me to put out to what like your thing, like to even if like like an unnamed artist, like like or many unnamed artists, like they die before any of them, like the Mona Lisa, like Da Vinci or whatever, like they died poor or whatever. Like I don't know if Da Vinci is actually one of those artists, but I know that the Three Stooges, all three of them, or five of them, I think there were in total, but like all died like poor in the gutters, like homeless pretty much. And now their stuff lives on forever. Like I want to, but they're the people that are the Three Stooges. Like I don't want to like just be on I don't want to be an SNL cast. I would rather be on, some lesser known show that I created myself. That's like my own creation. I don't know. That's more important to me. I don't really know where I'm going. I think I just started.
Two things I want to say on that. One, you have created over 100 episodes, and both you and Jared told me how so many people quit podcasting, whether it's 10 episodes, whether it's 15. That's a huge accomplishment in itself that you have created and published as many episodes as you have, for one. And for two, you're recognizing what it is that you enjoy about content and enjoy about podcasting. That's amazing.
Yeah, but isn't that like, it's like egotistical to like be like, I just want to create something that's like legacy. Like, see, this is me going like playing devil's advocate against myself, like the skeptic against myself. Is just like, am I selfish for just like I'm creating just to be remembered today or after I die? I'm just trying to create something, like I'm just trying to be create something so I can say that I created something. I don't know.
I'll interject in there, and it's maybe the idea of the legacy, you're too far reaching with it. Maybe direct it more on the people around you. It's the people, because those are most likely the people you care more about. I think legacy, I just want to be remembered in terms of like my family and the people that I was interacting with as an overall good person, because we all have bad qualities in ourselves that we don't like or wish that we're less. But we have a unique way with the way that like technology is and the internet. We have the ability to actually leave a different type of like legacy for our family and our friends and friends of friends. And we have the ability to influence. Like, we might not want to be called influencers, but we have the ability to influence if we want to, because we all have platforms. And being able to create a platform, that's why I think it's a privilege to be living in this country at this time period with the internet, because we have the ability to do so. And you've chosen comedy and like laughter and positive energy around your podcast. Like, you didn't make it like a pop culture talking about random fucking shit all the time. Yeah, you have episodes where you talk about stuff like that, but that wasn't the podcast. The goal of the podcast was fun and laughter. There was, every single time I went down to the studio was always a good time. That was always your goal, was to make it the coolest type of hangout that there is, and then do a podcast around it. Having that energy around what you do is positive. It's good. That's what you want to leave ultimately. When I think legacy, it's how are you leaving, like, how do you want to be remembered essentially by the people closest to you? And obviously after 100, 200 years, you're probably not going to be remembered. Like, we all live, if we want to believe in this, we live different lives and multiple lives. You go to heaven, you go to hell, wherever you go. But after a certain number of years, people are going to forget. I saw a TikTok where it was like, after a certain number of years, I think it was like 100, someone else is going to live in your house. Someone else is going to work your job. Someone else is going to do what you do. Like, people will forget us, but it's leaving the impact on the people around you. That's cool. And if it gets further, it gets further. But that's not the goal. The goal is to impact people around you and share that energy that we have, because we all have energy. And sometimes people just need a little bit lighting of their spark. And if you want to say that I helped you light your spark, awesome. I'm happy that I helped you on that journey. And I only ask that you do the same for others. And that's what you've been trying to do the whole time, is inspiring and helping others push that energy forward, because that's a good energy. We need more of that energy in our society, not more of this fucking bullshit false narrative that's being pushed on social media. People are trying to pretend to be influencers. Everyone's talking about talking points that they're just regurgitating from other people. Be yourself. You have to figure out what that is. We talked about this on our episode about originality on my podcast. Figure out what original is to you. Figure out who you are as a person. And that takes revisiting. because you're going to keep growing, as we mentioned through this podcast. And Brandon right now is going through that. He's revisiting what he wants, who he is, and you need that. That's growth. To be able to do that, most people can't do that. So obviously there's going to be you talked about like the critiques that we have of ourselves. And I don't always like publicly talk about our critiques that we have privately of stuff that I think that you should do, or maybe I don't agree with. Then I pride myself on just being honest with you. Like if I don't like something that you're doing, it's not because I don't like you as a person. That content just isn't for me. Just like when we talked about, you didn't want to do the interview stuff. That content just wasn't for you, and making that content wasn't for you. Having those honest conversations with people of where they could improve actually matters. Not enough people are willing to do that. And I think that's why our friendship is as strong as it is, because I'm willing to look you in the eyes and be like, maybe you should try this. Maybe this isn't working. Like even going back to the original when I didn't want to do your podcast until you got on Simplecast. Like
Yeah.
it was that honest push. Like, it's not because I hated you. It's not because I didn't want to do it. It's because I wanted you to be better. I want more for you because you're capable of doing that. When I think of you and your personality, you have all the tools. You just got to figure out how you want to use them.
I want to add to that because you, Brandon, have even done that for me even today. We're watching one of the videos of a podcast I posted and you go, did you record this on your iPhone? Yeah, back in the day I did. Yes. And he said it right like that. Did you record this on your iPhone? Yes.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's why my girlfriend loves me. Is like I don't know how to lie, so it's like I just like I.
As a woman, that is an extra reason she loves you. Just gonna be transparent.
It can get me in trouble, but if you know how to work me, you just have to ask me the question. And I'm like, fuck, I gotta tell you, because I don't know. It's like I just don't know. Like as soon as I start to lie, I'm like.
I would rather that. I'd rather be transparent. Tell me straight fucking up because you're like, I can tell you did this on an iPhone. I would rather hear that.
Well, I'll tell you, it's why Jared and I have like had such a good, collaborative and just like friendship, relationship, all these years is because when he is like today on this episode, he's voiced a lot of like, just really nice things. He said a lot of nice things about me, but it's like, that wouldn't mean shit coming from anybody, but that's the same guy that said, I won't do your podcast if you're not on, Apple and Spotify. Cause he's like, what's the point of me doing that? Like, I can't even tell my followers where to hear my voice, and it was like, and all the criticisms or just like critiques or like, oh, I don't really like that lane. There's been some other things that like I'm not going to say on the podcast. We've talked off air. Actually, last time he was on, there was something specific that he's like, I don't know why you talk about that. Like I wouldn't talk about that so much. I think Jared knows what I'm talking about. And like, but I know it's honest because like not only is he able to say kind things about me, he's able to say like things that I could be hurt by or offended by or like that are just true criticisms or things that he doesn't like. So someone who can give you both is, I think, the most valuable type of thing because that at the end of the day, they're going to tell you the real thing. They're going to tell you what you want to hear when you want to hear it. And they're not going to be mean just to be mean. So like when he's making jokes about like, oh, you're quitting. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Like I'm not offended because like I know that deep down it's his way of encouraging me. Like he's pushing me as he said, like he's pushing me to get to that step because he knows I can do it. And when I don't believe in myself, if he believes in me, then like, that's how I can get there.
Sometimes it's just that extra push from someone else because we all have self-doubts. Like sometimes you just need it to come from a different voice. Like the voice in our head can be real cruel sometimes. So sometimes hearing it from someone else can help reevaluate things and sometimes could reassure you of what you were actually thinking. Like hearing these thoughts that we're having or ideas that we're sharing with you. And I hate that we turned this into the intervention of Walie, but like
that's not what this is.
It went there, but like we're using a real life example of what it's like to struggle with content. We all go through it. Amanda, you'll probably go through it at some point with your content. And you sometimes need to get around people that you vibe with and you connect with to actually talk about the stuff that matters and get to the point to get you over the hump to the next thing. Like when I went on that legacy podcast that we recorded on the Ever Changing Vibe, that ignited me to do a project that I'm working on. And I mean, I'll tell you guys after we're done recording about the project and how that's been going for me. But like that inspired me to begin that next journey. And then seeing Brandon get on that journey with the reaction stuff, like when you started that inspired me to start turning the wheels and get back into journaling and thinking about what's next. So like having the network of people to compare yourself to, but also bounce ideas off of is like underrated and super valuable, because it's like you want to compete. That's natural. We're all competing with each other in some way or fashion, but it's to get back to collab, to work on our strengths. Like you think about basketball players in the off season, especially this generation, they'll go and train together and work on different moves together because it'll help them in their game and they're helping move the game forward. We're all helping the game of podcasting move forward by collaborating with each other, by also competing with each other. It's a balance that we have to like figure out as people, that you want to compete because you want to be the best, but you also have to work together with other people to get to where you want to get to.
Straight facts, Jared. Straight facts.
Always with the quotes, Amanda. You know this.
I know. I know. And I be referencing them all the time. Now they just come to me. It sounds
nerd
like
reads.
What? I missed that. What'd you say?
You say, you say I read.
You fucking nerd, dude.
I haven't read in a minute. I have like 2 books I gotta read.
Weird flex, dude.
You got to create a vision board, brother.
Yeah.
I ended up doing it with my girl. We created the together vision board. We actually did it. I'm big on like, if you say something, you got to do the shit. Like,
yeah,
especially if you say it publicly. Like if I put it out there, like I got to hold myself accountable. Otherwise I'm a hypocrite. Like,
all right.
Like,
so how should I, and what's the last thing I should say? Like I should say something. I should put something out in the ethos. What's the last thing I should say?
In terms of your ever-changing vibe, or in terms of this podcast?
For this podcast, the last thing I should say, the last thing that I need to like make sure I say publicly, because like you just said, you got to do it. You got to stick by the things that you say publicly.
I would say that you're not done with content, because that's true. Like in some form or fashion, you will do content again. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know in what like form it's going to come, but we do know you have the skills, you have the personality, and you have the evidence behind you that you will do the thing. So I would say kind of holding yourself accountable is referring to taking breaks is important, but also that quitting is not an option. Changing that mindset into doing something else is important. It's good to reflect, but it's also good to get back into it. So it's like whenever you're ready, get back onto that bike and start riding, because you'll be able to take those training wheels off really quickly.
And just because you took a step back doesn't mean you're quitting. You know, you're reevaluating, you're reflecting. You know, you don't want to be creating the same shit or just sharing the same shit you already showed, sharing shit that everybody else does. That's not a bad thing at all.
Maybe and this is like a original thought here, but maybe it's the marriage between Wallie and Brandon that you really need to get back to, that you talked about off podcast. Brandon is Wallie and Wallie is Brandon, and you need maybe to figure out a way to feel comfortable and confident enough to share that with the world, because I think Brandon's a really dope person and I think Wallie's a dope person, but I think together there's something that is there that needs to get shared, and maybe that's what it is. And I don't know, I'm just talking and thinking out loud as I'm going through it, but I think it goes back to our original conversation when you started the podcast. I understood the identity of Wallie, but maybe it's time for Brandon to come out.
All right, Amanda, again, thank you for this intervention. I know we were talking about
intervention. Now I feel bad. I feel really bad.
This would be the title.
Are a good thing.
This would be the title.
I'm trying to instill positive mindsets, not intervention.
I'll give you some thumbnails.
The Intervention of Walie title. Bam, slam it out there.
All right. No, but for real, I definitely need to get back into the studio, and not just to clean up the studio, but to actually sit behind a mic and record.
And if you need a guest, Jared or I would be happy to be a guest. I'm volunteering you too, Jared. Either one of us are more than willing to be a guest.
And I'm so thankful that
no pressure, but like if you need one, we got you.
These are the people. Amanda, again, I'm so excited about this spark, this new journey, another podcaster, and for you to bring on Jared to kind of ease my comeback story. Jared is like, I give him a lot more credit, and I think towards the end he was kind of taking a little bit of credit. Finally, take a little bit of credit, Jared, because this really couldn't have happened without you. In the same way that I'm sure you could agree that every guest that you've had couldn't have got you to where you are today without them. So I think the both of you, I really appreciate this journey. And like I said, I'm going to say one last thing. I have nothing to plug and promote, but I will do content.
Boom. And I also want to say just thank you, Amanda, for having me back on the podcast. I always appreciate the opportunity.
Guys, we're not done.
I didn't know we were wrapping. That's the way.
He's like, that's it. I'm done. The intervention's over. But I do want to add a little kudos to you, Jared, as well. You have spoke a lot of, I guess, spoke. That's not. You have initiated. That's what I want to say. Initiated a lot.
Maybe.
Okay, inspired, spoken me. I was gonna use the. I'm not great.
I'm trying to give you extra words.
You have inspired me as well, and you are how Brandon and Wallie and I got connected as well. So. Because I was on your podcast, it's all a connection. It's a connection. So I started for the new year. I used to end my podcast with asking a question that my best friend came up with. And then I was like, I don't want to do that no more. You know what? We're done with that. So I switched. Do you guys know who Jay Shetty is?
Yeah.
He's a monk. He's an author, motivational speaker. He's got a podcast. Well, I've listened to a lot of his podcasts and I liked the way he ends his. So I started ending mine that way. So he has 2 segments he ends with. The first one he calls the many sides of us. And you have to answer each question with only one word. Okay. Are we ready?
Who goes first?
Brandon.
Yes.
I really wanted to you ruined my bit. The last thing I was supposed to say was I will do content, and then
you're gonna have to say it again.
I said it was my podcast. You could have hosted.
Ooh.
You had the option.
The tides have turned.
You had the option.
Out of the turntables.
Question 1. What is one word someone who was meeting you for the first time would describe you as?
A lot.
Okay. Jared?
I cheated. Already.
Nah, we got a lot of crazy illiterate people, so a lot is definitely one word. I would probably say vulnerable.
Okay. Question 2. What is one word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you? Wallie?
A lot.
You can't use the same word.
That's you did not establish that rule in the beginning.
Well, I established it now.
And I will still use it. I think people that are first meet me will say that I'm a lot. And it's a lot of, whether it's annoying, a lot of noise, a lot of laughter, a lot of whatever. And then the people that are close to me understand that it's a lot of love. It's a lot of, genuine, just connection and just a lot of passion and a lot of excitement. So again, I'm going to use the word a lot.
Okay. Jared?
I don't like the word empathy just because it's been taken out of context, I think, in social media. So I will say sympathy or sympathetic.
Okay. Question 3. What is one word you'd use to describe yourself? Wallie?
A lot. No.
Right.
Okay. All right. But I was serious. The first two, my answer was a lot. One word I'd use to describe myself: unpredictable.
Okay. Jared?
One word I would use to describe myself. Evolving.
I like that.
Oh, that's a good title. Evolving, changing vibe. No.
You could use it. You could use it.
Oh my god. What is one word that if someone who didn't like you or agree with you or agree with how you presented things or your mindset, how would they describe you? Not like a random like internet troll, but
like if my sister and I disagree on a topic like that, or do you mean like someone I know of that maybe they don't like me, but like
more so the second one.
someone who annoying? I don't know.
Okay. Jared?
Petty.
Oh, can I take that one?
No, this is why you go first.
Oh, fuck off.
Question 5. What is one word you're trying to embody right now?
Identity.
I like that. Okay. Jared?
Awareness.
Okay. Segment 2. We got the final 5. These need to be answered in one word or one sentence max. Number 1. What is the best piece of advice you've heard or received?
There's been a lot, so I'm gonna
Which one that comes to mind?
I'm gonna relate it to the podcast. Nobody is listening. Nobody's listening.
Why would you say that's the best piece of advice you've heard?
Because I heard it very early on before I had even launched my first episode, and I was sitting in the studio with one of the guys that I started with, and some other person who was like guesting for the first time, and we had been chopping it up for like an hour before we even started recording, and like there were so many fun, good conversations, and I was like, I don't know what I want this podcast to be about. I don't know what I want to do. Blah 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 blah. And then the guy that I had started with said to me, he's like, I don't mean to be offensive or anything, but like nobody's listening. And that advice I kept reiterating throughout my entire journey is like, nobody's listening. Like I don't need it to be something like, I don't even have it posted. Like, well, like, why am I trying to figure out what I'm supposed to post when I am not even posting? Like, let's just sit and have fun. Like, let's just enjoy the moment. Let's hit record and then just figure out what we want it to be. And we don't have to put it out ever. Essentially it's not supposed to be anything. Like nobody's supposed to be listening. So it just put out your own creative voice. Like just put out the thing. Like just do just start recording.
Okay. Jared, what's the best piece of advice you've heard or received?
You already know. It's tatted on my arm. Take a chance.
Okay. Number 2, what is the worst piece of advice you've heard or received?
Keep going. Keep going. Try harder. Kind of. Keep going. Try harder.
Okay. Jared?
My least favorite piece of advice I hear on the podcast every once in a while, just do it.
just annoyed of it.
I remember you saying to me, please don't say just do it.
I would like to like, kind of articulate my point of like, just keep going. Like going back to like what I've talked about today is like, sometimes you can't listen to what other people like, deep down if it's really working for you, if it's really the right thing for you. So don't just like just because someone else, likes it or like even with the reaction stuff, like if I'm not having fun doing my reaction channel, but like I have two buddies that are like, yo, just keep doing it. Or as Jared kept talking about, like he was getting all these views and clicks and stuff about like his, sad boy TikTok phase. And I bet all of those people in that moment would have been like, yeah, just keep posting it, try harder, keep doing more. But that wasn't what he needed to be doing. He needed to evolve out of that. He needed to get out of that. In the same way, like I needed to not like just keep driving a broken car. Like you need to just be able to like reflect on or like know deep down, like only you know what is the right thing, and you just have to be honest to yourself.
I love that. Okay.
At first you gave me like a okay, what does Jared have? Does Jared have something better?
Well, in terms of,
like I knew I needed to articulate that.
well, I mean, just building off that, I think just do it's lazy. Like it's just lazy people's advice because obviously you should just fucking do it. Like no shit.
Yeah.
But like what else? That's why I always tell people you could say just do it. It's just what else?
But elaborate.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3. What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. Something I used to value that I no longer value. I'm such a like sentimental and just like person that I put like this crazy value on anything that has been a part of my existence. So like I just like I value too many things too much. So it's really hard to say like something I don't value. I don't value people's opinions. I allow them and I listen to them and I think they're important, but I like it's not even that I take it with a grain of salt. I just hear them. It's like, but I don't give value to anybody's opinions, whether their opinion agrees with my opinion or their opinion is the opposing opinion. I don't give value to it. Your opinion is from your life experience, your story, your knowledge, your everything that has happened in your brain, in your body is why your opinion. So even if we agree on the same opinion, like I can't give value to it because you said it. Whether we're talking about, if Joe Rogan says something, I can't value his opinion more than my own opinion. And I can't value, the CNN headline more than, my sister's opinion or on something or my girlfriend's opinion on something. Like I don't value people's opinions. I just go, oh, that is very interesting. That's how that person thinks. I like hearing opinions and everything, but I like that opinion isn't valuable. Show me with action. Like show me what you can show me the value of your opinion by, doing.
Jared?
Just repeat the question so I want to like make sure I answer it right.
What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Does it have to be one word? It can be like a little phrase almost.
It can be a sentence. This can be a sentence.
That content isn't everything. I made a whole episode about this. Is not everything needs to be content. Not everything needs to be shared. Some things are better off keeping in your personal life and keeping to yourself. Things can be used as a learning lesson, but not everything needs to be shared.
At me next time.
That was more of you and me thinking about my TikTok stuff, like my dating videos. Not everything's content.
I can relate to that with my Snapchat, so I get it. Number 4, if you could describe what you would want your legacy to be, if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
One sentence, or this is like a thing?
About a sentence.
Okay.
I don't know. I tried.
Okay.
I would hope that it would say something along the lines of that. How do I word this in the way I want to make it like a sentence? I'll kind of go over a little bit over a sentence, but
It's okay.
that he saw and heard me, that he cared enough to ask the why, that he didn't have to care, he didn't have to ask, he didn't have to talk to me, but he did. And I think that is the legacy I want, is that I cared enough to care about other people. Because it goes back to the quote that I talked about, that I released this today about community, is we live in a culture of individualism, and it's not bad to be an individual. I think it's great that we have a country that we could be individuals, but what we've lost is community. What we've lost is caring about our neighbor. What we lost about is caring about our friends and family. It's all about us a lot of the time. And I think it's good, but it's also has a lot of negatives. So I would say that I cared enough to be a little bit selfless. Obviously, there's some ego involved in making content, but I cared enough to ask people why they do what they do and talk about their life in a way that their friends and family can receive it.
What was the question again? I think that was heartfelt. Yeah, go ahead.
If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be, as if someone was reading it, like a monologue, maybe monologue's not the word, but what would you want it to say?
So, all right. Yeah, I answered what I answered. I'm already starting to regret some of my answers, because I feel like I'm acting as a big philosopher, and I'm trying to think of the most clever thing to say, and now I'm just
it doesn't have to be whatever.
I know.
You got to think, this is what you're feeling now, and that's going to change. I mean, as you say, you change by the day, so you might feel differently tomorrow about how you answered this, but this is what you feel right now, which is not wrong.
Not at all. We're all evolving, and even people who don't change every single day, we're still all changing.
If I went first too, you would cherry pick on my answers and go off of it. So I think it's better that you go first. That it's your actual thoughts.
You did this last time you came on?
No, this is new.
I just started doing these.
I enjoy this. I like this. This is more up my alley for I like also that content creator.
Yeah.
I previously would end it with a question that my best friend came up with, and I was like, fuck that, I don't want to do that no more. And
I used to do a fortune cookie, so
I liked that. I used to like that. That was pretty cool. It was different.
Wait, what would you do with a fortune cookie? You would read it?
Yeah, I would just open a new fortune cookie every day, and then it would just be like, all right, what does that mean to you?
Oh, that's cool.
Fortune Cookie Fridays.
Maybe if you kept that going, you'd still be going.
I want to come on and answer what a fortune cookie means to me.
One sec. Wait, do you have any more questions?
Yes, I have one more.
Okay, but then we're not done. I got one more thing to show you.
You got a fortune for us.
I'm very intrigued to hear what both of you have to say for this. Last question. If you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
Be authentic.
Okay.
You have to be authentic.
How are you going to prove that?
He thinks I'm gonna go grab my little thing.
That's a good one, to be authentic. If I had to create one law that everyone has to follow, it would probably be that you have to express your feelings. Because I don't think enough people express how they actually feel, whether it's good or bad. I wish, even if you think about bad friendships or breakups that you had, if they were just more honest from the beginning, you probably would have never dragged on a relationship with that person, whether it's platonic or romantic. And I think a lot of people would be better off if we were a little bit more direct with how we feel about stuff, even if it was just a temporary feeling, even if you're just I'm pissed at you because you didn't take out the trash or whatever. I'd rather you just say that versus storing that, because you store that, I don't take out the trash, and then in a couple weeks I didn't do the dishes, and now you're pissed, you're double pissed at me almost. I'd rather people just express how they feel.
But what about
I love that.
You're questioning if you even want to be friends with that person, and do you even love that person? And then it's just like a thing that internally you have to go through, and you have to like find that understanding, not convince yourself that you do or don't, but like you have to remind yourself why you do. But if you're having to express your feeling while you're feeling that, like, how is the other person going to know that it's just like it's a thing that you need to internally kind of like figure out.
It also goes, the law is to express your feelings. It's not to always express it to someone else. Sometimes you have to express it to yourself. Because sometimes we don't even express it to ourselves.
Yes,
so the law is
a technicality there.
You have to express your feelings. Doesn't mean to a person, preferably people, because that obviously we live in a society with people, but to yourself as well. Because like sometimes we lie to ourselves and don't express how we actually feel. And like, I'm just gonna go to the gym and not deal with this shit. Like, I don't feel like being upset today. Like you said, you got to feel.
I'm just gonna numb it with alcohol and drugs.
Drugs, yep.
Well, can we still do that in your?
Yeah, it's if you want to do that, that's totally fine.
I feel like getting drunk.
This ain't prohibition. Everything's legal here in my world. I said everything.
He's not outlawing alcohol.
All right, Amanda, if you ever needed a new closing segment.
If you are listening to this man dumped out a bag of fortune cookies. There is like 20 fortune cookies, maybe more.
Oh, there's like 50.
Gotta pick one. Gotta pick one.
All right, yeah. Should we do one? They taste like shit. They're super stale, but like we'll.
Gotta pick one. This gotta be your clip now. That was fucking awesome.
Oh my god.
Some ASMR. Ooh, that one was not stale.
Nice.
No, he's eating it. How old are these?
I don't think you want that.
I don't know. Asians don't crack. I think that's the saying.
Is that really what it says?
No. I was making a joke on black don't crack, but like Asians stay young.
Like, that was the most wild fucking fortune cookie I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, I ordered a bunch of racist fortune cookies. They're all racist quotes.
Jesus.
Oh my god.
All right. This is some OG ever-changing vibe, like Carroll Connection type of quote. A calm sea does not make a skilled warrior or sailor. Let me try it again. A calm sea does not make a skilled sailor.
You still fucked that up, I think. You said a scaled.
One more? Did you hear me?
Did you say a scaled sailor, or you mean skilled sailor?
All right, let me try. Let me do it.
That was a good one. I mean, it's the same idea of like the quote of like, you'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war type thing. It's the same thing.
This time I won't eat first. This one's probably better for the episode. To give happiness is to deserve happiness.
Wait, what deserves happiness?
To give happiness is to deserve happiness.
I like that.
I like all these. You guys want to see how much weight I can gain?
Grab that bottle of whiskey and let's get at it.
I will do content. Peace.
Can I plug my stuff now?
Yes, Jared, how can they find you and how can they connect with you?
Since you guys won't be watching the ever-changing vibe, you could go check me out, the Carroll Connection. I'm kidding. You'll have to tune into his episodes. They're hilarious. But you could check out the Carroll Connection at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you want to go watch the podcast, go on YouTube, search the Carroll Connection. Go check out the episode with me and Wallie on it, and me and Amanda on it. Got tons of great guests, tons of different content. So go check that out. And I look forward to our next episode, whether it's your podcast, my podcast, or the ever-changing vibe.
And we will plan and coordinate that so we all know.
Maybe a little bit better.
Yes. But I will link all of Wallie and Jared's info in the show notes. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.